Okay, you guys ready to start? It's 11:30,
Yes.
so that means it's go time. Okay,
Yay.
ready or not, here we go. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What Anna Said podcast. Before we start, I'd like to say that we're so grateful that you're tuning in, that you're here with us, whether you're in the middle of a busy day, on a quiet drive, to our viewers, to those that are here with us experiencing this live. Thank you for being here. Today, we are covering this book, Formed Underwater. And this is a book that has been sitting deeply with me. And this is the third episode in this new series that we've been covering. And we talk about some uncomfortable truths. We talk about some of the questions that you typically avoid asking yourself. Mm-hmm. And something that I'm understanding as I walk through this book is that many times the transformative moments in our life come quietly, in truth and reflection. So we're going to spend our time doing just that and reflecting on those questions. So we encourage you to lean in and take this journey with us as we walk through this together. Let's all take a deep breath and let's begin.
Yes, thank you so much, Anna, for making our guests who are live and who's watching comfortable.
Thank you, Brandon.
We have the best audience. Thank you guys so much for coming here. Okay, and please feel free to chime in at any time, okay? But for those who are watching, you're going to want to grab a pen and paper if you can, because the questions that we're going to dive in within the book is going to grow. We talk a lot about purpose on here, and so we've learned, me and Kim, we are teachers at Little Champs Academy. It's a homeschool academy, and so we talk a lot about purpose, and we tell them, even if it's okay if you don't know it now, or if maybe you do know it, but know that it's going to continue on growing. So when you take your notes in whatever discussion, whatever questions we have or thoughts that come upon, make sure you write those down and just continue to add on to those things every single day, okay? But for last week, we got to talk about, just a recap. Anna asked us a question, a book that we're introducing today, which is called Formed Underwater. It is a privilege for me to get to know this author, but you guys get to know him and call him Father. So this is amazing for me that when we dive into what we're going to dive into next, you guys get to really speak because you guys get to see him and saw all the things live in person as his daughters. Right. But the question she asked is, when you think about the chapter, Formed Underwater, what do you think is happening? Me and Kim, we had a similar answer, which is when you're going underwater. When I speak about my fear of going underwater, we think about pressure, we think about the weight. Therefore, we think about the pressure in life and maybe the challenges or trials that we're having a hard time facing with. Where we're underwater, we have to face those things. So we're under pressure for good reasons. And then Anna's answer, which is perfect, she got to talk about when she thinks about formed underwater, she thinks about a baby in a mother's womb and how that baby is being formed, which was probably the correct answer.
No.
That's why it's called What Anna Said podcast.
Okay.
I remember me Kim was like, that's a good answer. And she asked us on spot. So the first thing I want you to write is when you think about that title, Formed Underwater, because you have to understand when the author wrote this title in any book had a purpose to serve this purpose of what this book is about. And so it's really, really good. So, and then we got to talk about how to use this book. And what I love is that you can use this guide for ministry, mentors, and for families. And go and check that, the previous one, because we got to talk about how you dive into those things. We got to talk about read it with openness and not pressure. Listen more than you speak.
That one was for Kim, yeah.
That one's for Kim. Allow silence and reflection. This one spoke to Anna, I think. And then honor each person's pace and story, which is my struggle. So we all really are learning through this journey of diving into this book. And as you see, it's a very thin guide, but that's exactly what it is. Do not rush it. Take it slow, dissect it, because when we ask questions like, who are you? You really need to understand what that question means to you, because this is your journey. This is all, like we said last time, When the author asks questions, he doesn't give you the answer. This is your journey. This is your personal walk with this book. So that's why I said grab a pen and paper. I also have my phone. I put notes on here, just so maybe a thought comes up. You can write that in your phone to come back to and maybe look at. And then a third thing that we touched about the most was that this book is not a formula. We talked about how it is. This is a compass.
Right.
And I love that we talked about how no matter where you are in life, when you take a pause, you can really, just like how you use a compass, you can pause, lay it straight in your hand, and just find where you're at.
Thank you, and thank you for just reviewing everything that we talked about the last two episodes. Like we said, the book is called Formed Underwater, and that was the first question that we opened up with. Is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about that. And as a former baby, I remember, just thinking about being in your mother's womb, and mothers ourselves, just thinking about that time. It's really important, and it's precious, and it's necessary for the baby's growth. They're building and they're forming, and it's important for them to stay in there for the 9 months, for that time, and the longer they're in there, the better it is for the baby, before being exposed to this world prematurely and not having what your body needs to be able to survive out here. And so that's the first thing that came to my mind when thinking about Formed Underwater. And like you said, this book, it's not these, if you're looking for the answers, this is not going to give you the answers. As you read and you reflect and these questions come up, and like we said many times, uncomfortable questions that you don't want to ask yourself, questions that you maybe have been thinking about quietly, and so this is that journey together, and we're coming to this not as teachers but as students to walk alongside each other and be a witness to the process. And that's what I love about this. And thank you guys for being open and sharing this journey, because it's not easy to ask these things, to be confronted with these questions, but these are very important, and these are the questions that form, direction, your life. And like you said, this is not a formula, but a compass. One beautiful thing you said was that no matter where you are, the compass will always point to, true north. That direction never changes, no matter the environment you're in, what you're going through. That compass is
because the
forever
author
stable.
previously talked about once he started asking the right questions in life, how reordering began to happen in his life.
Right.
And just to say, as mothers, in the topic of as a baby being formed in the mother's womb,
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but do you guys remember the baby app? And so I was thinking about that the last podcast because I was just wondering when I looked at the baby app, and then it would tell you like your baby's the size of an orange, or this is the time the eyelashes is formed, or this is the time. But just pondering on what you said, the reason why I like that answer so much is because each of us was uniquely born with a purpose. We tell our little champs this: you have a purpose. You're born with a purpose to pursue all the things. And so just thinking about the details that our Creator, our good God, had thought about every minute, every second for that 9 months of forming us. You better know that He came with your purpose too, okay? Not just your futures.
Right.
He orchestrated your life in a way for you to discover who you are. And what I love about discovering who you are, the one thing that we all have in common at the end is that everything that we do, the reason why we're tired and we're exhausted, but we feel alive and we feel fulfilling, is because everything that we do, our purpose is calling, is to glorify God.
And thank you for that, because if you've been following along, you know that we haven't even got into chapter 1. So we went through the author's note, we went through how to read the book. So you still have time to join us. You still have time to order a book and follow along with us. And even if you don't have a book, it's okay, because we're going through it together. And so you're still welcome to be a part of this journey. Today we're walking through the introduction. And so the introduction begins with one sentence, a simple sentence in the beginning, and it says, first of all, I highlighted this in purple, and the purple is stronger than and so the words are, let me get through this.
You should show them your notes. Hold on. This is exactly
that's
what
crazy. Exposing me is crazy. But the sentence in the beginning, it says, I did not stumble into questions about purpose later in life. I have been carrying them for as long as I can remember. And, you know, most of us carry deep within us our own purpose, whether you recognize its existence, but it is there within you because it was put there by the creator, by the person who created you. And so those questions, you know, that understanding that there's something more, that there's a purpose in there, all of us carry that within us. Whether you have the language to uh, verbalize what that is, that question, that yearning, but all of us carry that with us. And so that's what came to mind in reading that sentence.
And it also reminds me of the potter, the potter
Right.
molding the clay.
Mhm.
You guys see a potter and they're working with the clay. They add a little bit of water, maybe some more clay, and they start molding with their hands in the same way that God is our potter, molding us. And we already have that greatness inside of us, that purpose that is for us to discover. And that's what's so great about this book. Like it says, formed underwater. It's 4 truths that shape identity, purpose, and destiny, and giving you the right questions that you may not know how
Right.
to ask them.
And that's such a good visual, Kim, that you just brought up about the potter and the clay. The clay, the clay is not begging the potter to give him a purpose. You know, the clay is just there, and the potter, before they even reach for the clay, there's already intention there. There's already design. There's already a purpose, and the potter is not blindly shaping this. And let's just see what this becomes. The potter is creating it with such specific direction, and they know what the purpose of this thing they're making, whether it's a beautiful vase or, you know, the potter knows. And this reminds me in the same way, because those of you who know that I work with my dad, we, over the years of working with him, we built many things, many beautiful things. And over the thousands of jobs that we've done together, never have I ever walked into a construction site and then, you know, picked up a 2x4 and said, what are we going to build today? Let's see what this 2x4 can do. No, you know, before we even touch the material, we first plan out what it is that we're going to build. We first have the vision, and then from there, from the blueprint, that is when we gather the materials. You know, we don't just walk into Home Depot and let the 2x6 tell me what I'm going to build. And so in that same way, that's the same intention, and that's the same purposeful design that we were giving when we were being built, with that with those things in mind.
And I love that you brought that up, because that reminded me of a conversation that we were all a part of, and your dad, and you were explaining that about how you it starts from the foundation, and he said, "Hold on, it starts from the blueprint."
Right.
And
He said, take it back. He said, you just got here, I've been here. Yeah.
And just to add to what you were saying, Kim, and then you as well, is Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you, in the womb I knew you, and before you were born I sanctified you, which means in here, it means to be set apart, or what I love is sacred purpose by God.
Wow. Yeah, taking you back to the womb. Thank you. Exactly. Before I formed you, I knew you. And so here in the introduction, we immediately go into some of the author's backstory in his earlier life. And it says here, I first encountered God in a personal and undeniable way in 1986 while living in American Samoa. I was born in Tonga, but my parents moved our family in the early 1980s, carrying with them hope, faith, and very little else. We were poor by every measurable standard, but rich in perseverance. First of all, that's crazy. Those lines right there, yeah. You know, carrying, you have hope, faith, and that's about it. You know, poor by every measurable standard, but rich in perseverance. Education was not something my family could afford to invest in, yet learning became something I pursued relentlessly. Every study opportunity that crossed my path, especially those I could access financially, I took. Not because it was convenient, but because I believed my life was meant for more.
I kind of want to pause on just the very first sentence before it dives into just his life. It's because he says, I first encountered God in a personal and undeniable way in 1986. And so when you're talking about when these questions were being formed, he's like, I know God. I knew him. I cannot deny God. Therefore, I think those probably where the questions came from.
Right.
Why am I here? I know I was born for greater than this, because the sentence even before that, he said, I did not stumble into questions about purpose later in life. I have been carrying them for as long as I can remember.
Right.
So he's already,
Yeah.
what am I doing?
Right.
There's already stirring in his
Yeah.
mind as life, like you said last week, life was lifing.
Exactly. And, you know, have you ever been in a season where you were driven by just pure belief? Because as, you know, reading this and the author talking about, you know, just being poor, but still wanting to pursue every single opportunity that came his way, that relentless pursuit of something greater, something more, whether it was within my means or not, but just that pushing forward and finding a way. And I want to know this, any knowledge that's out there, I'm going to go and absorb it.
Poor but rich in faith. Like
Right.
that sentence is literally what he was going through.
Exactly. Not because it was convenient, but because I believe my life was meant for more. I know many times in my life I've been there. I've asked those questions, you know, for myself too, just thinking there has to be more than this. Yeah. Like there has to be more. I don't know what's out there, but I got to go find it. I got to go do it. And so that same idea is that's what I'm getting here as I read this is just that, just literally driven by pure belief. There's nothing substantial to give me that validates or justifies like me pursuing this thing. And some people on the outside may even see it as chasing the wind, you know?
I even think about those moments when you're doing something, maybe it doesn't make you happy doing it, whether that's your job or whatever you want to pursue. I know for us, we always ask questions. I know we spoke about this a lot of times. I know that it's just not just me, but and you too as well. Lord, is this for me? If this is not of me, take it away from me. So I love that we're asking these questions as life is going.
Right.
Because we want to make sure that everything that we're doing aligns to our purpose.
Exactly.
And so discovering that, again, always goes down to asking the right questions. Is this one for me?
Right.
Am I supposed to be here? Because sometimes being in a place where you're not like joyfully happy may be the place for you. And as we talked about earlier in the title, as I'm just thinking now, being formed underwater, is this your moment to be formed underwater?
Right. Exactly. And just seeing how the author begins the introduction by picking up from his encounter with God, you know, this is where life began. This is where a change began. This is when an idea was born. This is when he started, you know, connecting the dots. And without having a real definite answer, he went, you know, fully 100% into this pursuit.
And I love how it says education, he's saying education was not something my family could afford to invest in, yet learning became something I pursued relentlessly. If you know this author, you know it's true.
Oh, yeah.
There's no excuse for you not to learn something. He's like, go on YouTube, go read a book, whatever you want to learn.
Right.
Did not stop it. So I love that he was still the same back at 1986.
Right. Yeah, those ideas were there. Whether he recognized what that principle was, it was there all along. And yeah, that's really neat to see. Kim, can you take it from the next paragraph there? Yes.
From the moment I met my creator, everything I did was oriented toward becoming who I believed I was called to become. I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't know how the path would unfold. I only knew that my life had direction, or so I thought.
They're saying everything I did was oriented toward becoming who I believed I was called to become. That's something there. I want to take a moment there, especially knowing each of our stories, and just thinking about that. We talked earlier about how the authors was pursuing every opportunity for education, for knowledge, pursuing the more, you know, and seeing here the reason behind his efforts, and that was because he wanted to throw himself into becoming who he believed he was called to become.
And before I add on to that, for those who does not know what oriented means, I have a definition for you. It means to figure out to where you are going and what's going on. And so I think, I'm not sure, I think he's thinking whatever it is I think I'm doing, this is what I'm supposed to be pursuing. He's
Right.
in the early stages of figuring why am I here for?
Exactly.
What is this? What did my creator create me for
Right.
to do? I love he said, I didn't have a backup
I was
plan.
gonna
Yeah.
say, let's focus on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch up again on that where it says, from the moment I met my creator, everything I did was oriented toward becoming who I believed I was called to become. And that's something I think that a lot of us can identify with because, from a child growing up, many times you grow up and the teachers will ask you, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And as you grow from a child in elementary school to junior high to high school, that question has always been sitting there. What do you want to, who do you want to be when you grow up, or what career field do you want to pursue? But we were asking the wrong question. It's not what do we want to be when we grow up? The real question is what is already inside of us. That the author later on realized, he didn't realize at the beginning that God already began working in his life whenever he did encounter God in a personal and undeniable way. He knew that God, later on, as you read the book, you'll come to find that the author found out God's true purpose in his life. And that's the thing that I kind of went off on this tangent, but as a child,
That's
that you
good.
get asked that question. And just going to read it again. It says, from the moment I met my creator, everything I did was oriented toward becoming who I believed I was called to become. You grow up like, oh yeah, I want to become this, or I want to go and do this or this. And speaking from experience, I'm just going to talk about my husband for a second, but speaking from experience, him growing up, he didn't really know what he wanted to become. Okay. He was just going where the wind blew. And later on in life, after we got married, then the direction of becoming aircraft maintenance was what he started pursuing. And now he's an A&P. And after he became that, we thought as a family, oh yeah, this is it. This is our purpose. This is where life is going to be. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. And we just thought that that's because growing up, that's what you think it is. You think that it's, you choose what you want to become, but you don't really look and search really deep within yourself. Okay, what am I really created for? Because Thiaki, if you know Thiaki, he's very good with his hands. He's good with creating things out of nothing. He can take a couple of bottle caps, some string, some little plastic little rolling things, and put it together with a toothpick and with a what do you call them? The Q-tips, and then he can create the little fighting figure sticks that will fight, and you have to pull the hat off. He's so good at creating that, or creating when we had our Secret Santas, and he would come and create something out of nothing. And his ideas, I couldn't even see those ideas, but that's because he had those ideas. He had, all of our ideas come from the creator himself. And that's something we teach our little champs too, is that all our creative ideas come from the creator who created us. Just like we teach them about the fan when we told them about the fan. Someone created the fan, the creator created the fan, which first started with the idea, and then the fan had its purpose. It's the same thing like us. Then someone must have created us. And to ask those questions of who are we really? Because right there it says, from the moment I met my creator, everything I did was oriented toward becoming who I believed I was called to become.
Something that I want to focus on here is that sentence that you just read. And it says, toward becoming who I believed I was called to become. And spoiler alert, author, you're about to go on a long journey. Because who you believed, oh man.
I love what Kim was saying because that's so true. We were growing up being forced to ask the wrong question. What do you want to be? And because of who I was, I wanted to be what everybody else was, not what I wanted to do or who I was created to become or what I was good at. And like Kim said, when we ask our little champs, we have on Tuesdays, we have a program called M&M here at the Dos Amores. And the program is called M&M, which stands for Money and Mindset. And again, exactly what Kim is saying, we get to teach him a creator made you, therefore you were created to do something. And if you don't know what it is, do you know that you're able to create that? If it's in your mind, if you wanted to write a book, if you thought about being a good painter, if you haven't started that yet, start it now. And I love in the beginning where we started the journey of meeting up with one another and through fellowship with all these years, and you coming and asking us, "What is your purpose?" And again, and we talked about this in the first episode, and you're like, what do you want to be? What is your purpose?" And I remember thinking, "Wow, 2 years, and you're just now asking me this. 2 years later, what do you mean? Like, what are we doing now?" And then you're like, "No, Andrew, go deep. That childhood dream that you had in the back of your brain, bring that forward." And so then we talked about writing a book, and then now I finished publishing that book, and that was like 3 or 4 years ago today. But just asking the right questions, not what you think you want to become. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's just understanding why the first chapter is literally the first question of who are you?
Thank you, Edna, for sharing that. And with that, I'd like to take a moment to hear from our sponsors, Dos Amores, who are the ones sponsoring this live. So we'd like to hear from them and hear a word for them. Okay, so for those of you who are watching us live, we also upload these episodes to our page on YouTube, and so that was the purpose of that. For our editor, you're welcome.
Thank
But
you.
yes, and they're going back to what you just said. That's absolutely it. You know, when we realized that there was something more, to this life, this day to day, all these things that I'm doing, there has to be meaning to this. You know, that's what kind of activates that journey of asking these questions. And here with the author talking about completely throwing themselves into the pursuit, not having a backup plan, didn't know the path that they were going or what would unfold, but just knowing that their life had direction, or so they thought. This also brings to mind God's calling in our own lives, you know, and not a church call, not a religious call, but really who God calls you to be, who God's calling us to be by our design. You think about all of God's creation. Think about all of his creatures. You think about a fish swimming in the sea. You think about a bird in the sky. You think about a tree, a tree I've seen all my life growing up in the islands. When I think about the mango tree doesn't have to try to be a mango tree. It just is, just like the fish in the sea. It just is. It's just living life according to its design, according to its purpose. But out of all of God's creations and creatures, we have man. And we can become so lost or frustrated trying to find what that purpose is, or trying to, give ourselves what that purpose is. Like the author says, who I believed I was called to become, completely forgetting that, hey, there's a creator in this process. He's already giving you design. He's already giving you purpose in your creation. But I think that that's something that you can spend many of your years in your life focusing on that right there.
I love that, Anna, and please forgive me for always taking us back to our little champs. But Kim, remember where we did the lesson for sea creatures?
Oh, yes,
And
yeah.
the kids were laughing because one of the things that we got to teach them is that each sea creature has an instinct. And then we get to tell them what that is. What an instinct is, you were born to do whatever you're created to be doing. And so I told them, when a shark is born, a shark is not going to come into the ocean and say, "Well, I want to be a whale," or "I want to be a shrimp." No, he knows exactly what he was designed to do. He's a predator. He has a predator mindset. He knows that he needs to eat all the sick and little fishes to keep the balance of the sea creatures. But the thing is that they understood what that is. Oh, there's no question. They just came and was doing exactly what they were supposed to do. But going back into the book, on the bottom of the sentence, it says, "I only knew that my life had direction, or so I thought." One of the
Dun,
things.
dun, dun. That's
Or
what
so
that sentence does to
I
me.
think we're still stuck on that one right here. But one of the things that I'm learning as we've discovered, asking the right questions, knowing those things are for us, and then we're standing there, we're like, okay, now what? Okay, I have an idea, Lord. I think I know exactly what you're saying, but now what? And one of the things that we learned is law of attraction. When you start to understand and know who you are, you begin to attract those things. And when that person comes or whatever it just keeps opening the doors into the next thing. So do it afraid because you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who you're going to run into because when you start to understand who you are and not go against life is telling you and say, oh, this is who I'm supposed to be. I am supposed to be a speaker. I am supposed to be a teacher. Then you're going to meet so many of those people that we have been connected to just like how we have at Dos Amores. It's just life will let you know that you're going the right direction.
Right. Another thing I want to point out here is that, especially from experience, God's calling in our lives will always cost us something. Always cost us something. I think about the brothers in Matthew chapter 4:19, Simon and Andrew, fishermen, who were there, and God told them, "Hey, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men." And they immediately left their nets and followed him. And even further down in that same passage, James and John, brothers again, and they're actually on the boat with their father. And God calls to them and he gives them that same call to action. And they immediately leave their nets, leave their father, their livelihood, their business to follow Jesus. Imagine that.
Yes. And a lot of times Jesus, when he asked his disciples to go somewhere, what did he always tell them? Don't bring nothing with you.
Exactly. Yeah, he said, let the dead bury their own.
Don't pack no food, no water.
Right.
Wherever you're going to go, wherever I send you, he was going to provide.
Jesus, that's my dad.
Yes.
And he needs help to carry. Follow me. Follow me.
Exactly.
How about that? But yes, it completely, his calling, it completes you to completely, it's going to cost. It's going to cost. What's the cost? We're going to read it right now. Okay, so, yes, please do.
Okay. In the early 1990s, I married and soon became a father of 2 daughters. Do you want to stop right there, or?
Yeah, so that's me. But you can keep going here.
Okay. When an opportunity arose to pursue theological studies in Fiji, I took it, believing this was the next step towards fulfilling my calling. See, there we go. I think this is what it is. I know what I want to do. This is what I think I'm going. What he said, so I thought so.
Yeah, right.
This journey was beginning.
Exactly. Then that next sentence says, while in Fiji, my 3rd daughter and my only son were born. Life was full, demanding, and purposeful. So I just want to take a pause here before we end this paragraph because there's so much between this sentence and the next sentence. It says, then in 2001, my family and I moved to the United States. And it continues that part of the journey. But between the two sentences here, seeing it written in front of me is so it's so interesting because there's so much life that happened here between these two sentences. He talks about going to Fiji where, he was married. He became the father of 2 daughters. He later on in life, he became the father of 2 daughters. He was married. Then an opportunity came to go to Fiji to pursue theological studies where he had Kim and my little brother. And so believing that this was the next step into fulfilling the calling. So here we are in Fiji. Life is full, demanding, and purposeful. And growing up, as a child, reading these words here, I really got to experience this as a child and see these things happening with my own eyes. And yes, I can attest it was full. Life was so demanding, but it was so purposeful and it was beautiful. And a lot of my fondest memories in my lifetime come from that time that we were in Fiji during those years, those years of building and forming. I remember being a kid and watching my father attend Bible college, attending his classes there. And, in Fiji, the buildings, they're open. So there's no walls, it's just the pillars. And so I literally can look and see him at his desk with the students and the professor and seeing them learn and seeing them study. And even as a child, not understanding the content of what it is that they were studying and learning, I had a front row seat to that, watching my dad study, watching my mother, hold on the fort at home with the kids, while they pursued this. This is still the relentless pursuit that we talked about in the previous paragraph. That's still that relentless pursuit here. So imagine us as Tongans in Fiji with Fijians and Indians, because that Indians are a large population, make up a large percent of the population in Fiji. But being there, everybody speaks broken English, and everybody's here to learn, to learn this thing, and just being a part of that and watching my parents plug into the local churches there, and being a part of that ministry there in Fiji. That was really a beautiful thing for me to see as a child. Maybe not understanding what's going on, but being a part of that, that really set the foundation for me as a child, watching him as he pursued.
And I know that I did. We met when I was 11, and you were on a whole different kind of this conversation with me. But I remember you always talking about having to sit and watching your dad do Bible school, and I just love that because, like you said, you had front row seat of seeing the author move through his life.
So yes, really did have a front row seat because, like I said, we're all, all these different ethnicities. Of course, we're all Pacific Islanders, but being here, watching my parents plant the local church there, Narere Bethel Baptist Church. So we were serving alongside our pastor that was there, and he's Korean. So he's Korean, we're Tongans, the congregation is Fijians and Indians. We all speak a limited amount of English, but we're gathering together and we're just, faithfully doing what it is that the Lord called us to do. And I'm saying us because I was very much a part of it, okay? As a student, but really just watching the growth pains and everything that came with that.
I just want to mention here, and it's just going through my mind, the first sentence, I am married and soon became a father. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you guys, but when I became a wife and a mother, I know you shouldn't think this way, but there was moments I thought, I had to stop pursuing the things I think I want to pursue, because we like to say, life was lifing. We didn't know how to fit certain things. We were trying to learn how to raise our children, and then figure out this married life thing together. Yes. And so I love that in the midst of having children and being married, he was pursuing college.
Yeah.
And where everybody was speaking different languages.
Right. He said, let's go to a foreign
And then his children got to see him do that. And it's a memory, and it's so important to continue. Don't let that, having the children, being married, those are blessings on blessings on top of what you're already, whatever your calling is to do. And because, like I said, I've known you forever. I've known your family forever. And you've always mentioned having that experience with your father. And I think that's a good thing that you got to see those things. And just seeing your life and how it is and how affected it was by seeing your dad pursue God in such a way, and figuring out, like what was saying, who you are. He's figuring out who he is, still being married, having children.
Yeah, thank you so much for pointing that out, Edner. It's, because of being so close to this, because this is honestly my childhood that we're reading here, parts of it, and hearing that outside perspective and hearing how you see things from your point of view, that's really interesting for me too, because as a child, you really do believe that your childhood experience is everyone else's experience. I'm like, everyone else is in the mission field, everyone else is living this life. So moving here and, building that connection and friendship with us, it wasn't until you pointed those things out, like, hey, you're weird. Don't talk about that out loud, okay?
My childhood was not your thing.
So I just love so much that you pointed that out. And also another thing that you pointed out is, yes, because all of us here, we're married, okay? All of us here have children. And let me tell you, the differences between going from a single woman to marriage, learning to live life with someone else, learning, their habits are not your habits. You didn't grow up the way I grew up. And so all of those differences, getting used to that, but then adding children to the mix, and what a blessing children are. Honestly, what a gift they are. But adding that on top of, I'm getting used to this person, we're living life together, and then here we have these bald
Not letting
kids.
those things stop you.
Exactly. But choosing, you have to be someone that's really intentional and really, to believe that there is something more out there for me, for you to take your wife, take your little children, and we're going to go, let's move outside of everything that's familiar to us, and we're going to pursue God's calling. I believe that I was created for this. And so this, my wife, my kids, not an excuse, but even a greater reason to continue to pursue this. And that's what it was. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And
Yes, I'm sure that having the children
right.
made him want to continue on pursuing this thing, which is the motive that we should all have.
I don't know if
It
I
took
had
me a long
kids,
time to figure it out. Okay.
I don't know. See, you just, for me, I'll be like, you know what? Let's go ahead and put this to the side. But that's not the case here. This was, let's turn up the heat. We're all
Yes.
going.
Yeah.
Everybody, come on.
Yep.
Yeah. And so from that we see here, life was full, demanding, and purposeful. And then in 2001, my family and I moved to the United States with the hope of continuing my education at seminary. And the next sentence that follows up, it says, that dream never came to fruition. Woo! Okay. Good thing I didn't read it. I know. I'm like,
Maybe I should have read it.
why did you let me read that? But yes, here we see a bridge between hope and reality, right? We just talked about the responsibilities of life. You have a wife, you have 4 kids now, and so you're in Fiji, and all of the ministry, all of the time that we had there, the experience, serving alongside these different ethnicities. And then here's this opportunity to go to the United States, and you know what? Let's do it with the hope of continuing my education at seminary. That was the one thing that was like, I can do it. If we go there, this is the dream. I'm going to seminary.
I'm certain there was this high hopes of, America, this is going to get even better than what it is right now.
Oh, it's a huge thing. In the islands, when a family goes to America, we're so happy for you.
Yes.
Everyone's happy for you. We're all gathering. I remember telling my friends, hey, I'm going to America. Like, I'm going to miss you, but I'll be in America. But like the whole church came together around us. And I remember praying for us, and they really gave us a beautiful send off. I still remember driving off in the van, because we had a church van, and I still remember driving off, and the church members in the congregation were standing there at the gates and sending us off with all their love, and
which only just means how much you guys left a mark there. To have such a beautiful send off, and then knowing where you guys are today. I know you're crying from the sense points of not knowing what was about to happen, and the goodbyes, what that really meant for you guys.
Let me just say right now, if I knew back then everything we didn't know, everything we didn't know about being in a different land, I'll be in Fiji today. I'll be in Fiji today. Okay. But yes, it's just that stepping into the unknown. And, here the author, from the beginning, so far we see so much hope, so much belief, so much of that, the relentless pursuit. And for it to all come down to this wall here, and says that dream never came to fruition. Unexpected detour. That's fun. That's always fun. I know, just kind of all your expectations and everything, just hitting a brick wall, for me, taking myself through this, putting myself in the shoes of the author, I can't even imagine that, I don't want to say hopelessness, but just that disappointment, that, okay, God, we've been rocking since, 1986 when I met you. And, so we've been doing this thing, I even moved from here, American Samoa, to Fiji, and we're moving again. And this was supposed to be rinse and repeat, but there's a wall here. You said no, there's a detour here. And so, that's what, just remembering it because of living it. That's the
Which
thing.
is why you always brought this up as we were teenagers growing up. And so I love that the audience gets to see exactly what I saw as you were telling me these stories.
Right.
So thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm really excited that I get to sit here and really see the story come to life in person.
Thank you, Edner. Kim, you want to read the next paragraph there? You want me to read that, so I can cry too. It's your turn to cry. Everybody has to take turns.
Let me go ahead. You got
I'll
it, Kim.
read it.
What I found instead was a foreign land. Sorry, let me just go back to that last sentence that Anna said. That dream never came to fruition. What I found instead was a foreign land with unfamiliar systems, responsibilities that multiplied overnight, and a lifestyle that demanded survival before vision. The man with the calling became a man with bills. The student became a provider. The dreamer became exhausted. Years passed quietly, too quietly.
Stop there. You're not gonna read again. Yes, thank you, Kim, for reading that. Did you want to pause on that, or
I what the that is such a story of many of our people.
Mhm.
And I know that was also a story for my mom, and she came from the island of Donga to hear the unfamiliar systems because it's so different
Yeah.
coming from the
Oh,
lifestyle of
yes.
the islands and getting used and
Mhm.
respectfully learning how to live here in the States and how things were going. I remember my mom having 6 children and raising them here in America. Her biggest goal at the time was getting all her children through school. So that tells me she stopped dreaming. All the things that she did before, it just went away quickly. All the things that you've lived before and learned, because now this is it. This is new territory. This is an unfamiliar place that I need to familiar myself with for the sake of my family. And like he said, like the lifestyle demanded full survivor mode, enter into full survivor mode in life. So how much you guys can feel the presence of leaving Fiji and familiar territory here in America, not realizing, oh, I think a lot of people get so excited to go something, not realizing, oh, the new changes that might happen, or the new people, and just trying to make a life of where you
Right.
are.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that about your mom, because this is the story of many immigrants, that come here, especially coming from the islands. There's so many differences, and there's so much that you didn't know you needed to prepare for,
Yes.
and I think that for me growing up, I always think about the experiences I had, being fresh, new here, fresh off the boat, being new here in America, but I forget to think about my parents, because my parents, they're younger. I'm 34 years old. My parents were younger than me when they brought us here.
Wow.
And to think about what their experience might have been as adults and as the leaders, having to protect us and bring us the light and the hope that we had when we were leaving and they were sending us off quickly
You're
became
gonna
snuffed
really
out.
hate me for saying this, but I can't stop thinking about this. But I remember one of the episodes on the Anna Said podcast.
No, you're not. I know what you're gonna say.
Just to give the audience an idea of just the mind change of what you guys had to adapt from going from the life in Fiji
Right.
to America.
You're. I don't. You're gonna tell that story.
Anyways, and she was in school, and was a teacher who asked, "What do you
So.
tell the story, Anna?"
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I just want them to understand the complete
No, yeah.
difference,
No, I love that.
the blessings
Yeah.
that you came upon, how well your father raised you to have such an awesome answer.
Don't add to
at one
it. Don't add to it. Okay, so coming, like I said, we were, being raised, coming here as a child, you think that everyone else's childhood is your childhood. So growing up, especially being a child in ministry and being there in Fiji with those children, talking about God in your everyday, interactions, that's
That was
normal.
foreign.
That's normal, right? And so coming here, it's my first day at school, and the first day of school, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's just you're nervous, no matter where it is. And I remember coming to the cafeteria, sitting down at the table. Thank goodness for assigned seating, because I don't know if anyone would have sat by me. But we were all talking, and they wanted to know about the new girl. And so they said, "Hey, so you moved to America. Why did your family move here?" And of course, what any normal kid would say. I said it was God's will. I said it was God's will for my family to come here. And immediately, just the eruption of the laughter, it was so loud that all the other tables were looking at us. And they could not stop laughing, looking at me and saying, "What? What are you talking about? God's will for you to come to
Because
America?"
you were sitting in the seminars with your dad.
Girl, stop. That's enough. But yes, so
taking it into
right.
it.
So it wasn't enough that we were, we new to America, but then being different in so many ways, in the way that we spoke and in the things we thought, and that difference being pointed out to me every day. That was so much fun. Yeah,
And like you said, I
love
can't
that.
imagine just how much more the other side of what your dad was going
Yeah,
through.
what my parents went to as the adults in the situation, everything was scary, everything was new, everything was foreign. And then you want to add responsibilities on top of that, bills, and then you're coming with already a big family. Woo! That right there was tough. Reading through that, reading through that paragraph there, and it's just talking about a foreign land with unfamiliar systems, responsibilities that multiplied overnight, and a lifestyle that demanded survival before vision. The
So
man,
just a question of
yeah,
just who am I? It was out the door.
yeah,
I'm trying to survive
mhm,
and raise my family and feed and bring food to the house, right?
right,
So I can imagine just how much that changed. Like you said,
exactly,
that's why it's so powerful when it says that dream never came into fruition.
right,
It's because of all the things I had to keep up with after.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I read this portion of the book, I remember uh, my eyes were watery, but I remember I was reading it over to my family, and whenever I read that part, that dream never came to fruition. And what they found was responsibilities that multiplied overnight, a lifestyle that demanded survival before vision. The man with the calling became a man with bills. The student became a provider, and the dreamer became exhausted. And I remember when I read that, I remember Jackie just saying, "That's how I feel." And I was like, yeah, as we grow up, like like I said earlier, touching up on what you think that you should become, sometimes it gets tiring. The older you get and you think that, oh, maybe this is the direction I should have gone. Now the dreamer is talking about coming here to America and realizing this new foreign land and how life is here in America. But it just goes back to everything too about what your purpose is and whether you know it or not. And that's what we talked about before when we talked about how we are, in the little champs. And even though sometimes it can be tiring and we're doing this or so many things that we're doing or putting together, it's so fulfilling because we know our purpose and because we know what we are created for. And now we can have our compass to take us in that direction.
While reading this portion of the introduction, you really see a quiet tension building up.
Yes.
You can feel the tension. When I read this, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the weight, the pressure. I'm feeling the responsibility, and I'm feeling that when responsibility multiplies, what usually gets sacrificed first? Me. Right? Because everything that you're doing is for these people that you love.
What dream at this point?
Right.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Let me just cross off the list because what I would assume is that this is the thing that's going to impact us. It will only impact me. If I take my dreams, and set them to the side, then I can focus on what my family needs right now to thrive and survive in this land. And I have a responsibility to do that as the leader of this family. So let me go ahead and put these dreams to the side. And I think that, sometimes life asks you to survive before it allows you to dream. And that's the thing that I see happening here. Yeah.
I love that because it means a lot because a lot of us is relatable. Just that portion.
Right.
You don't have to go to a foreign country to feel that.
Right.
Where life it becomes too much, it gets too busy.
Exactly.
That is a situation that many of us are feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it says, the man with the calling became a man with bills. The student became a provider. The dreamer became exhausted, and years passed by too quietly. And I think that speaks to who said for us to do this? No, I'm just kidding. But I think that really speaks to a struggle that a lot of us can identify with, because those quiet conversations that you have with yourself, and you knowing that this dream that you uprooted your life for, that this is the same thing that brought all these responsibilities that you now have to answer first before you could even follow that dream or pursue that. A lot of those things happen in quiet. We have a lot of those seasons away from the public, or away from even our own family inside our own house. These are things that are hard to confront. And so, it says that the years passed quietly, too quietly. And about 10 years ago, I realized something that terrified me. My life felt like it was slowly slipping away. Not dramatically, not publicly, but steadily. And that right there is so scary. It's so scary to me. I think about how when we go to the beach, I know, Edna, you don't know this because you don't swim, but I think about how, when we're with our kids at the beach, and a lot of times we're in the water, and I'm sitting on the sand, positioned in front of them where I can watch all of them, and, not even 5 minutes, they're already down. They've already swam offshore. They're far away from me, and I have to say, I told, get back on to this side, guys, come back over here, because I need to be seeing you guys. And so, but when you're in the water, you don't realize that you're drifting. You're just playing around, and then you look up, and then you notice that, oh, I've moved off from the mark. I've moved away from where I was supposed to be. You don't realize it happening. It's not something that you have to work to do.
Because you're in that moment.
Right. That is a natural drift, and that just happens naturally. And that's what I think about when I read this, is just that my life was slowly slipping away, not dramatically, publicly, but steadily.
And do you know, even though I don't know how to swim, but hey, I can float. And when you're floating,
Sure.
you just start daydreaming off.
Yeah.
And then like minutes and maybe an hour pass by, you're just enjoying yourself. But when I think about the quiet moment, I can't think. I can only think about what questions were lingering during the quiet seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Why was I in Fiji working all these years? What for? To come
For
here
what?
and do this?
For what?
And then like, what am I doing now? What is my new dream? Or like, what I do here I can imagine, because a lot of us go through that.
Yes.
That season quietness before, like when I said with Anna, when Chipani came to that table in my house many years later, what is your purpose? Until you are able to face the real question that really,
Right.
well, like he said, something terrified me. That was very scary when you say what your purpose was, and then to like, I don't know,
Right.
what is it? And then you start throwing stuff out there, like, well, maybe it's this, or maybe it's that.
Why is
So I'm
that so
wondering.
hard to answer?
Yeah.
And something that you said that I want to point out is, like you said, it's when you lose focus.
Yeah.
Like when you lose focus and then you're drifting. That's exactly the thing that happens. It says, continuing here, slowly drifting. The goals I once held close were drifting farther from my reach. I began to accept, reluctantly and painfully, that I might never become who I thought I was meant to be. I still believed in God, but I no longer expected Him to intervene. I still believed in God, but I no longer expected Him to intervene. This right here reminds me of so many times just that spiritual fatigue, just that exhaustion where you don't lose faith, but you lose expectancy, and you stop looking for God to show up.
I also hear like confusion.
Mm-hmm. Just accepting that this is it. Everything that built you, everything that you went through to this point, just accepting that was it. That maybe that Fiji thing, that was just a fun thing. Maybe it never was meant to lead somewhere. Maybe who I thought that I was created to be, maybe that's not it. And just accepting, the thing is because for someone to see you accepting that, you would be justified in that. Yeah, of course, you have a family. You have these kids you need to raise. You're in a new land. You need to get stable. Of course. Yes, I support you. Yes, you should. And those are the things that make it even harder to come out of this place, I feel, for me, personally. The part where it says I might never become who I thought I was meant to be. Here, reading this, we see the identity collapse. Yes. Everything that the author thought that he was meant to do. And we see that the identity shift when survival enters the picture. Because now your full focus is keeping your head above water. Or underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under pressure.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. I really love that sentence. where it says, I still believed in God, but I no longer expected him to intervene.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I had that encounter for many years, and that was a year that I call the 4 years of my wandering life. So my childhood, and why I love when you talk about your childhood, is because it really was different from mine, right? And so my childhood, I grew up in an abusive household. And so within an abusive household and not having a father to love me, a lot of confusion was in that. But thankfully, he took us to church and I was able to know God through that church. And knowing God, there was a lot of confusion. Like, God, I know you. How will you intervene in what I'm going through right now? And then so which I love to tell the story because the author was our youth minister. And your dad, he got to be the minister for our youth and he counseled us through knowing how to read the word, knowing who God is, and knowing that God loves you. And that was a powerful thing for me to hear and to understand that there was a father, Mommy says eternal, spiritual, and all the great things above, that he loves you. But I remember going to a season when my stepdad did go to prison, right? And then seeing just the struggle of my mom and how she had that same month, eventually she lost her job. It was just one thing after another. I kind of see that pattern going on in your dad's story. It was just one thing that after another, but still keeping that hope alive because like he said, he took us back in 1986. I first encountered God in a personal and undeniable way. And that's sort of how I see it. Like, God, I know you're there. It's undeniable, but how do you intervene here in my life right now? So when he went to prison and then going into a whole new season of chapter of not knowing that our full provider was gone. And then having my mom having to depend on me, my siblings who were old enough to have jobs to take up that load of being able to keep up with the bills, right? You don't think about those things
No.
until one thing's lead after another, and then you're faced with another trial. And so that led me onto a relationship that I should not have been a part in for 4 years, but it led me into a relationship, a homosexual relationship for 4 years, because I thought, what's the point? My story didn't. Thankfully, this author continued on pursuing God, but mine was, Lord, I don't
You
know.
said, I got a different book. My book is different.
I decided to wander for 4 years. I
Mhm.
still believe that there was a God, but it did not make sense into what I was going through. Until one day when I came back, I could not deny God's presence. Going into the 4 years of wandering in a homosexual relationship, for me, there was no peace. I started to remember God's goodness. Even in the darkest time, I remember how good God was for me. And also, and so encountering someone down the 4 years of just that confusion, asking all those questions, I encountered a woman who, anyways, long story short, she came and spoke to me and shared me her story of how she was in a homosexual relationship for 11 years, right? And I remember thinking, you came right on time because this is exactly what I was needing. Because we go back exactly to we're talking about the disciples, how Jesus came up to them and just said, just follow me. Because I think sometimes we hold on to, for me personally, I was holding on to, Lord, I had dreams. Where does that go? Or how do you make sense of all of this? Trying to figure all of these out instead of just focusing like God, He's gonna provide everything. Just like you talked about earlier when God said, when you follow me, don't bring nothing with you. Don't worry about how you're gonna eat, how you're gonna drink. I am going to take care of you. So I share that because a lot of us have our own story of that confusion, of that wandering. This author, he took 10 years to be terrified. Say, Lord, what am I doing here? And recognize that the years ahead before him was just slowly just drifting away, like you said. I love that. When you're on a beach in the ocean, you don't realize that your life is just continuously being pushed back.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Edna. I know it took many years hearing you, being with you through life and seeing these things happen and seeing where you are today and the way that you can talk about these things, and with so much strength is amazing, and it's such a testimony because I really saw you on the other side and where you are today. And so being able to do this together and walk through this together, I never thought, if you told me in high school that we would be back here together living life together again, but through everything that we went through has purpose and meaning, I wouldn't even consider that being a thing. Yeah. So it's
Well,
really,
and that's why I love every time you were talking about your childhood because it was completely different from mine.
yeah.
But just having like a good father, trying to continue on pursuing. And you as children, we always say this, but I love is when you're going to church or wherever you are, bring your children with you. It's such a simple thing, but so powerful because your children are getting to see you being exhausted, but continue on pushing, continue on asking those questions. Who are you?
Right.
And they get to see that. And you discover that alongside with them, I think.
Yeah, very true. They taught me more than I taught them. Trust that. But thank you so much for sharing that. Here we see the author, you know, in the beginning, we talk about all the hope. We talk about his encounter with God and the hope and pursuing the season of belief, not really knowing what's ahead and not having a backup plan, but fully devoting himself to it along with his family. You know, now going into a world that's unfamiliar and then taking it further and then moving to the States that's even more unfamiliar. And now life is lifing and now having, you know, these bills and these responsibilities and having to put your dreams to the side and then eventually crumbling under the weight of that, you know, under the weight of that pressure, that expectation from society, from your children, from your wife, as a man of the house, all of those things. And then finding yourself waking up one day and just being terrified and realizing that life was slipping away. Everything that you had believed, it's like the one thing that you had faith and hope in, that thing just being completely shattered and crumbling. And now here we are. Life felt like a downhill spiral. I no longer had the strength to resist. And just thinking about that momentum, you know, going downhill, you don't have to try to continue to go down. You don't have to, you know, just like if you're on a bicycle or going downhill, you don't have to pedal. You're going to go downhill. And so for the author to use
Hold
that,
on.
right. For the author, yeah, you just hold on, brace yourself. But for the author to use that saying, you know, that it was a downhill spiral, that they no longer had the strength to resist and kind of that, I was going to say surrender, but that's the next sentence. And so it says, and so I surrendered, not in faith, but in resignation. That's the thing. You know, surrendering in faith is I trust you, even when I don't understand. And surrender and resignation is, you know, I'm done trying. I'm done trying. And just thinking about those two things, one anchored
Yes.
in hope and one completely depleted. And, you know, I know the end of the book, but just thinking about this process that the author is going through in real time and seeing how God is completely emptying him of himself, just completely stripping everything away, even the idea, the hope that he had, just all of those things being challenged, being questioned. And here we are at the end of that, and the author completely, I surrender.
And so after this, we get to understand that's why he wrote this book, right? And then the fourth truth that he discovered.
I'm like,
10
please tell me there's
years.
more, because please don't surrender. I'm in this story. But yeah,
because it's a story that fits everybody.
Exactly.
It's you right,
Right.
no size fit all type of thing.
Yeah.
And so thankful that there's not a time like once you have that awakening, get on there. I love that he's like, I need to do something about this.
And what I love about this is that it brings, you know, the truth that sometimes the most dangerous place to be is not faithless, but hopeless. And right now, sitting with the author in this space that he's in, that's where he is. But it also brings to the truth that even believers, we can quietly grow quiet in those things. You know, even the author who went to Bible school and college, and you know, even them. And so that's the truth. That's something that we experience ourselves in our own walk, seeing that. And so I believe that this is, you know, everything that we've read so far and all the questions that have come up. I know when we were talking about the fading slowly, I was asking myself, which is more painful, failing fast or drifting slowly? You know? That's not for you to answer, please. I know you wanted to. That's for you to think about until next week. No, I'm just kidding. But honestly, those questions that come up as we read through his experience. We talked last week, like, please, if he experienced, please don't experience it next. Like, let's learn from their stories, from your experiences. That's why I love that we get to talk about this in real time and share this with our friends that are watching, with our viewers, our listeners.
So I hope that at least someone out there will relate to at least one of us three.
Right.
Getting to share our stories because you're joining us on the journey.
Exactly.
So.
And I didn't go through this for nothing. So, but yes, those kind of things. And so this is a wonderful place for us to rest, in, and just to kind of be still and take all of those reflections, throughout the week before we come together again and go through. We haven't even got through the introduction. We haven't even gotten through the introduction itself, but just those questions, and to take that moment and that time to reflect on them and to ask yourself those same things and to even just take inventory of your life. Is life lifing? Are you at that point, because I know we've experienced it. Yes. Are you slowly drifting? Did you lose focus? What about your dreams? Is life demanding you to survive before it allowing you to dream? Those are the questions to ask yourself. These are questions that we avoid. These questions are so hard even to answer to myself, to have that honest, time of reflection and to answer those questions honestly to myself. But those are the important things here. That is part of the compass. That is part of the journey that we're taking together, not as teachers, but students, and just being able to witness the process, your process, and to be able to say like, man, I've been there through your testimony. Like, what a testimony, because I've seen it. So thank you guys so much for sharing. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in. Thank you to everybody who showed up to support. We really appreciate you all. You can still get your book and join us. We haven't even got to chapter 1, so you still have time. Thank you all so much, and we will catch you on another episode of What Anna Said podcast. Bye.